While looking at the various topics available to us when it comes to exploring the stories of those living in the lands between, we left a few of the more simple topics on the table, choosing to focus on enemies that would take significantly more digging to uncover the truth behind. With this said, it's important to remember that even those enemies who wear their stories on their sleeves, so to speak, could benefit from a closer look at the environments they inhabit. It may not change their background, but we can see how these people lived, thrived, or died in the lands between, simply by paying attention to where they can be found. Today we're going to talk about the Kaiden Sellswords, and while we may all know the basics when it comes to these mounted warriors, it's still worth exploring their stories, how some continue, and how some came to a bitter end. Thank you for joining us for this exploration of the Kaiden. If this is your first visit to the channel, thank you for choosing to spend some time with us. If you like this video, or find any specific lore you were looking for in our playlist of over 80 episodes, please consider subscribing. We love making our Elden lore series, and the community that's sprung up since its creation keeps us motivated to explore the deepest reaches of the lands between. With each subscription, that community gets a little bit bigger, and we can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Even if you don't subscribe, thanks again for checking out our content. And with that said, let's return to the topic at hand. The Kaiden Sellswords are likely encountered very early in our journey across the lands between. Not long after finding the first step, we make our way towards Stormvale Castle. While exploring the area, we can encounter these enemies along the roads and in the woods. Many of them follow wandering nobles, likely as guards or escorts, as their name suggests. The Kaiden armor tells us, these hulking, fearless mercenaries, said to hail from the mountaintops of the wintry north, are adept at fighting on horseback. Kaiden is the name of their home settlement. We see what strong riders they are, as they can chase us down with their curved greatsword, the Dismounter. This curved greatsword, wielded by the brawny sellswords of the Kaiden, combines the blades of a scimitar with the heft of a hatchet, a difficult-to-handle weapon that demands much of the wielder's strength and dexterity, but with practice and ability, it can serve as a versatile weapon even on horseback. This sword is perfect for knocking us off our horses and makes the Kaiden Sellswords a dangerous enemy as we begin our journey. In the cliff-bottom catacombs, we can find the Kaiden Sellsword ashes, which give us a little more insight into these enemies. Ashen remains in which spirits yet dwell, used to summon the spirit of a Kaiden Sellsword. Spirit of a mercenary belonging to a horse-riding folk, skillfully uses a massive blade made for dismounting other riders, and enhances his already considerable strength with war cries. The Sellswords of Kaiden made their prowess known on countless battlefields. The Kaiden Sellswords were known well for their strength and brutality, which explains why nobles of the lands between would employ their services so frequently. We know that the wandering nobles were seeking something, even though they've likely forgotten what it was themselves. We believe that the most likely answer is that wandering nobles set out to find great runes for themselves soon after the Shattering, as it's assumed there were other demigods, aside from the ones we face, that are now long dead, but that may be a story for another time. Regardless, if these nobles were seeking a dangerous prize, they needed the most fearsome warriors their money could buy, and the Kaiden Sellswords' reputations preceded them. With that said, it seems as though these warriors may have only been suited to battle with other humans, as we can find a cave that tells a story of failure for these brutes. When exploring the High Road Cave, we can find a number of corpses strewn about. Some of these are the typical emaciated bodies we're used to finding across the lands between, but the further we go through the cave, the more these corpses seem to be those of Kaiden Sellswords. It seems as though there was an expedition that led to the furthest depths of this cave, and these powerful northerners were no match for what was found within. One area in particular has us face a land octopus and its young, and there are a significant number of Kaiden bodies strewn across this area of the cave and the tunnels leading to them. When we reach the middle of the cave's large passageway, we find the corpse of a noble, showing us why the Kaiden Sellswords were here in the first place. This spelunking trip was an ill-fated search for whatever this noble deemed so important he was willing to gamble both his and the lives of his caravan to find. Unfortunately, it was ultimately a wager he lost. Another interesting detail about the Kaiden Sellswords is their connection to the north. As we know, the mountaintop of giants is closed off to us when we first arrive in the lands between. We cannot journey there until after defeating Morgoth, obtaining the Rold Medallion, and taking the Grand Lift of Rold. Their armor says they hail from this area of the lands between, and when creating our character, we have the choice of creating a northerner. A face found among the hardy people of the unforgiving north. Some say they're descended from giants. We believe this means this possible connection to giants extends to the Kaiden Sellswords as well, meaning that at some point in history, there may have been some interspecies breeding between giants and humans. This may seem ridiculous based on the sheer size of the fire giant we meet in-game, until we remember the Sword of Minos, which tells us Minos was an undersized giant, and was viewed as sullied and terribly grotesque. As the sword itself is made from his backbone, it seems as though Minos would not have been much larger than most humans, meaning he may be a link to the common ancestry between the Kaidens and the giants. Very few Kaiden Sellswords can be found in the north. Some travel with caravans, protecting them just as others in Limgrave do, and another can be found not far from the consecrated snowfield, leading a group of wandering nobles. This particular sellsword is interesting, because we can take a guess at what these nobles were searching for. Why else did people from below the mountain migrate to the consecrated snowfield, other than to stand before Mikola and join him at his Halig tree? Bringing a group of nobles to his homeland could be considered an easy gig for one of the Kaiden, so we think it's likely he took this job, and that's why he can be found closer to his homeland than any of the other sellswords we encounter. There is the question of why there are so few Kaiden in the north, and we believe this one is easily explained. As they are mercenaries, they were likely often hired by those who lived just below the mountain, the nobles of the capital city, Leyndell. After the Shattering, nobles left in droves to pursue whatever it was they wanted to pillage from across the lands between. And as they were already comfortable hiring the Kaiden, that's what they all did, until there were so few of them left in their homeland that the bulk of their tribe now traveled the lands between, making their coin by escorting these fragile, pampered nobles wherever they saw fit. The Kaiden likely assumed that these would be simple jobs, keep their employers alive as long as they could, and if the journey should be too hard for them, the Kaiden could then go home or move on to the next job. But due to the removal of the Rune of Death, these nobles never tired, even to the point of being nothing more than skin and bone, eternally shambling across the land in search of a prize they cannot remember, and due to their contracts, the Kaiden are forever along for the ride. Thank you for joining us for this dissection of the Kaiden Sellswords. These unassuming enemies, like many throughout Elden Ring, have hidden depth in areas we would not normally think to look, such as the description of Northerners, or their relationship to the wandering nobles. It goes to show the care FromSoft put into crafting every small detail of their world. Do you have any thoughts on these burly enemies? Why do they continue to serve the wandering nobles even though they're nothing but flesh and bone? How do their horses stay so strong on a diet of nothing but Roa raisins? Do you think anyone else has employed these warriors besides the wandering nobles? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss out on our lore explorations. We look forward to seeing you again for more Elden lore.